Hello everyone, back at it again in the crawdad. I just launched into a trout and smallmouth pond up north. We've got pretty good conditions for fishing, but there are some rain showers that are going to be coming through. The original plan for today was to fish saltwater, but it's blowing even harder in the ocean. And it's not bad right here in this little pocket. We've got east winds, which aren't my favorite, but we're going to make the most of it. You know, if this was the ocean front, it would be whipping. So this is relatively calm compared to what it would be on the ocean. Got pretty clear water. And to start out, I'm going to be throwing a swim bait. This is the River to Sea 168 S-Waver. It's got a natural color there, kind of a purplish pink belly. I thought the smallies might like it. And it'll save me from bed fishing. I got a couple to follow it, but they weren't really into it, and I ended up switching gears pretty quickly. But to fish it, I'm doing a slow roll to get that S-Waver action going, and then I give it a couple pops. Every once in a while I give it a couple pops and pauses. And the fish will hit it if they're aggressive. It's sort of like working a jerkbait, but it's bigger. It draws in some bigger fish. And I was hoping just to get some fish to follow it. And I did get a few followers, but they were smallmouth and small rock bass. This place has a good population of rock bass, which harass the smallmouth while they're spawning. So I want to be very careful fishing for spawning smallmouth here. I want to get them in the net, unhooked and released ASAP. Alright, the swim bait wasn't working out, plus we had some rain showers come through, and I thought just while we're in this kind of sheltered area of the lake, I'd fish around some of these light spots where the fish are spawning with a reverse rigged big TRD in the hot snakes color. It's a little bit like copper truce, but toned down a little bit. So it still has that kind of chartreuse yellow that smallmouth seem to like, but it's not as in your face as like a bright chartreuse. But to be honest, a lot of colors would work for these fish. Basically, you just need to make an accurate cast and then shake it down there a little bit in the right spot, and they will eat it 9 out of 10 times. There's really nothing to it. But again, I don't really want to be doing this with all the rock bass around in this lake. I'm just going to catch a few, release them quickly, and then see what other ways I can catch them on this lake without bed fishing. But yeah, just shake it in the right spot. They pick it up. As soon as they pick it up, I reel down to them and give them a little hook set. Loosen up the drag as needed. I want to get them in the net as soon as possible. And if I've done my job correctly, the fish will be hooked right in the roof of the nose. As soon as I get my thumb on him, I can get that hook out of him. He's still pretty green. Yep, right in the nose. Nice smallie. I'm going to let him go right away so he can go back to his bed. But that reverse rig, I'll have a video on this coming up, but the reverse rig has a 2-aught Neko hook, a big TRD with a nail weight in the tail section, and I add a fluoro keeper to that hook. I've done videos on that fluoro keeper before. Maybe I'll link it below if I can remember. But anyway, that's the deal. And oh yeah, you could catch them on a lot of different ways. You could catch them on a drop shot. You could catch them on a Ned rig, a regular Ned rig. But this system, the bait slides up the hook. Slides up the line. They really have no leverage to shake it free. And as long as, you make an accurate cast and shake it in the right spot, 9 out of 10 times they'll eat it right away. You also need fairly light line. If you fish too heavy line, they'll just look at it. So this is 6-pound Yozuri hybrid leader, which really has the diameter of about 10-pound fluoro. And yeah, you just put it in the spot, shake it a bunch of times, and they eat it. Nothing to it. Alright, I caught a couple smallies bed fishing. Tried to release them as quickly as possible so they can defend their nests against the rock bass. Those rock bass are relentless, and they'll go in and mow down the eggs as soon as those smallmouth are out of the water for, even a few minutes is too long. You need to get them right back in the water, and they'll swim right back to their nest and defend it.
What's that?
So what I did is I switched over to BFS gear and a megabass Karashi. I got a little more of a ripple here on this side of the lake, and I thought it'd be fun to fish the Karashi for a little bit and see what I could come up with. And the first one is a rock bass. I was really hoping to pull some smallies out of the rock piles, but they were kind of overrun with these rock bass. If you've never seen one, this is what they look like. They've got kind of orangey eyes. That one's full of eggs. So I kept fishing the megabass Karashi around for a little bit, but I only could come up with more rock bass, and I think I got one smallmouth, but nothing very interesting. So I switched over to Shimano Macbeth Flat. It's a flat-sided crankbait that Shimano makes, and I have it in a clear craw pattern, which I thought might be good for smallmouth and the clear water. And I've got a little bit more wind here. And so the game here is to purposely bump it into the rocks, ricochet off those rocks. There's a little bit of wood in here too, but mostly rocks. And bang that crankbait into something and hope that a smallmouth picks it up. One of them did. Get some forceps and get those hooks out of that fish. Now I think this fish was a female because it was fatter than some of the males I was catching off beds. And I didn't see it on a bed. I was fishing rocks. So I think this was a female hanging around, waiting to spawn and drop those eggs. Something's wrong with the back there. It looks like maybe had a fight with an eagle or something at one point, or an osprey, and the back got jacked up. Or maybe it's just some sort of growth abnormality. A few casts later, fishing more rocks with that crank. Stop and go retrieve if I'm not actually hitting anything. And then when I actually bump into something, I'll give it a little pop. Try to get it up and over the rock. And that's when this next fish ate it. It's all about changing direction or bouncing off of stuff. And I got it in the net. It's another smallmouth. Target species. It's not a very big one. This one wasn't on a nest either. It was in the rocks. And I don't think this one was spawning. I think it's a little bit young to be spawning. That's my best guess anyway. But nice fighter on BFS gear. Kept working my way around the lake, fishing different rock piles. There's rocks all over this lake. Lots of structure, lots of beautiful homes too on this lake. I got another one.
What's that?
That's not pulling quite as hard as the smallmouth. That is a rock bass. The rock bass will eat almost anything. They like small Ned rigs if you're trying to target them. They like anything that crappie would eat. They have pretty big mouths for their size, bigger than, say, a sunfish. And they'll go after, fairly big baits for their size. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I did keep one of these for my cat. He's now my best friend. And a fishing friend of mine, we'll call him Greg, he says I can't release the rest of them alive. So I dispatched him for the eagles and the ospreys and the loons and the turtles.
GoPro, stop recording.
Otherwise, I think these things would take over the whole lake. All right, I'm going to keep fishing around the lake, hoping to find more smallies and less rock bass. If I'm not running into rocks, I'm using a stop and go retrieve. And that fish ate it on the paws. I think I was swatting some black flies away from my face, and that fish ate it when I was swatting at the flies. And it's another rock bass. These things don't fight nearly as hard as the smallmouth. So you feel that initial jolt, and then they basically give up and just come in.
Rock bass.
Use the pliers to unhook them so I don't accidentally get stuck. Here's that Shimano Macbeth flat. Nice craw color, flat sides, fairly clear bait, but it's got an orange belly. I thought with the wind here and that color, it might be a good combo, and the fish seemed to like it. But up on this section of the lake, I was catching mostly rock bass. So I fished my way around the windy side of the lake, and I'm back on the eastern side, the calm side, because it's an east wind. And I caught a few more rock bass, but really nothing too interesting. And the wind was starting to crank up a little bit more. So I switched over to a Megabass Dark Sleeper, which is a small, semi-weedless swim bait that smallies seem to like. But I could feel the rock bass pulling at the tail, and I didn't want them to rip the tail off that swim bait and render it useless. So I switched over to a Savage Goby tube. I don't think they make it anymore, but to me it fishes a lot like a dark sleeper crossed with a tube. It has a fin on the back that acts sort of like a weed guard, like a dark sleeper. And the smallies seem to like it if you fish it slow along the bottom. So I did that for a while and put a few more smallmouth in the boat. All right, I had a good time floating around out here, catching smallmouth and a few rock bass too. Actually, more than a few rock bass. It ended up being a good plan B, despite the east wind. I think if I attempted the saltwater, I would have gotten blown out to Martha's Vineyard or maybe Block Island, 10 miles out to sea. So this was a much better alternative, I think. And it worked out pretty well. I only got rained on a little bit. I had to cut some of that footage out. But it was a pretty good trip overall, and it was a fun day. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll list all the gear in the video description, just like all my other videos. And I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!